So we've got a cool looking swing here. This is definitely a modern approach to the golf swing. Really trying to limit the hands as much as possible, very much coming in on a one plane swing as we're coming down. And so I think a couple of things can happen is if we don't have a lot of like upward force, especially with a driver, we're not kind of hitting up on the ball, that our back can take the brunt of it. And as we see and get near towards impact, definitely point that out. But as we start to come back, we can see the intent of this is we're trying to get really flat and underneath. And we can see how with the right hand, we're very underneath the club and the left wrist is very, we're starting to see all the knuckles. And so as the position at the top, we're in a pretty neutral spot coming back. But as we start working up here, what ends up happening is we can see our chest starting to lift and we're getting a little bit taller. And so we're trying to get as much of a swing or as much rotation. And so a lot of this, where we're trying to increase our distances, if we're not using our legs to push and load and use our lower body to compress the ball, then the feeling is, well, I want to hit it farther, so I'm going to swing farther back. And the lengthening of the swing sometimes doesn't actually always relate to the power that you can get, because now their timing's a little bit off, especially if the lower body kind of stops and the upper body kind of continues to rotate. And so as we get to this, a la John Daly kind of position where, the club head is now peeking out on the other side of the left eyeball here, if we bring it back a couple frames, we can see how, in relation to our arm angle here, how flat our club face is. And so we're very closed, which is going to rely on our lower body and our rotation to take us through the swing, and we're not going to have to try and use our hands to flip at it. So this is by that bowed left wrist. I think the thing about this position is our shoulder plane and our arm plane, our hands are really starting to get up. And so we're going to have a hard time because this the right elbow, this amount of space that we have here, is we're going to have to try and tuck that elbow down as we go down into the swing while we're trying to rotate. And so there's a lot of just room for error where we're going to come from a high position back down to a low position. So as we start to cycle forward, we can see how the lower body does a great job of essentially already starting to clear. We're perpendicular with the ball, and the left hip, and we kind of look at our a back line here, we're going to see how our left butt cheek starts to really peak and go through. And so we can tell that our hips are kind of fully rotated as we come into impact. Our swing plane, we're right on plane here. The blur, obviously we can't see the face, but we're at a pretty neutral position where that angle is actually pretty square coming through. And so the thing for me is that our release from this position is very much still a turn, which isn't bad, but what it does is it robs us the ability of pushing off this back leg towards, and we don't get a lot of extension through the left leg. And so as that kind of continues to stay bent and we rotate around, this part of our lower back right here is going to get crunched really hard. And so what we see is this lower body has essentially stopped, which is a good thing to transfer that energy. But it's stopping in a way that's trying to have the upper body continue to rotate. And so what we end up seeing with a finish in something like this is this massive amount of rotation where we're all the way wound up, all the way past here, where our back is now having to withstand a tremendous amount of force. And so in an effort to try to not have the hands flip, this is definitely, I would say, an extreme version of an anti-flipper, basically a no hands. Sometimes this is called a hammer swing, where that left hand is very much in front, but a beautiful position to make impact with the ball. Definitely a fantastic player. I think a couple things just to save the back, and as well as maybe some more efficient patterns on how to use that lower body would be like the only little snippets, but overall, fantastic swing.